Welcome to the Harper Classroom. I'm Dr. Harper. This instructional video is on Inventory Theory EOQ, Quantity Discounts with Excel. To set up the problem, suppose we can purchase an item for $100, the item cost, C. But if we purchase between 200 and 800 items, then we can have a 3% discount on the $100 item cost and buy all of the items for only $97. If we purchase over 800 items, we can have a 6% discount on the $100 item cost and purchase all the items for $94. So what is our order quantity to minimize total cost, or EOQ, if our demand is 2,025 items per year and it costs $60 to place an order, and to carry one inventory item over a year, it costs 30 cents per dollar of the item cost, which is 197 or 94. That's the problem setup. Now let's look at the solution procedure. To solve a quantity discount problem, we start with calculating the initial Q, where the equation is given here, where the C is the discounted item cost for each category. The second step, compare the initial Q with the feasible range to determine the feasible Q. The third step is use the feasible Q with the discounted item cost to determine the total cost, where the equation is given here, and that feasible Q, which yields a minimum total cost, is the EOQ. That's the solution procedure. Now let's see how to solve this with Excel. In Excel, I've already typed in the problem. For each category, let's start with the initial Q. Down here's our equation. So that'll be the square root of 2 times our demand, which is given right here, but I want that frozen, so F4 to freeze it, times our unit cost, F4 to freeze it, divided by, open parenthesis, our unit carrying cost, F4 to freeze it, times our discounted cost. But that's going to vary as we go down. So there's our equation. And then I copy that down. And then let me format this. Control F1, we bring our bar, and we format this down to, let's say, 1 decimal point. Control F1 to go back. And then let's just bring this up here. And there's our initial Q. Next is our feasible Q. If we compare our initial Q with the feasible range for category 1, if the initial Q is in the range, then that becomes the feasible Q. For the second category, the initial Q is not in the range. We pick the value in the range closest to the initial Q. The value in this range is going to be 200. Likewise, for category 3, the initial Q is not in the range. The value in the range closest to the initial Q is 800. We type 800. Now our total cost. So down here, we'll calculate total cost. And the equation is given down here. So that's going to equal our unit carrying cost, then I'll freeze it, times our discounted cost, times our feasible Q, divided by 2, plus our unit ordering cost, and we freeze that, times our demand, and we freeze that, divided by our feasible Q, plus our demand, freeze that, times our discounted cost. And so there's the equation. That's our total cost. Return, and then we copy that down. Again, we want to format that. Bring this down. Let's just bring it down to dollars. Control F1 to hide the bar, and then we just bring that over. And there's our total cost. So now the minimum, and if we have a lot of categories, it's easy just to say if that value is equal to the minimum of all of these values, and I'll freeze those, comma, then if that's true, then we want to say the statement that that's equal to the minimum, end quotes, comma, otherwise it's a blank, and that'll be end of my if statement. And then I can copy that down. And notice it'll find for us which one is the minimum. It's going to be the middle one. So now our EOQ then is going to be the feasible Q, which is 200. So now let's graph this problem in Excel. Let's reduce this size down to 120. Now over here we want to start with Q and graph the total cost as a function of Q. And we'll do it in increments of 10. And we just copy this down. And then we'll start with the total cost for category 1, the total cost for category 2, and the total cost for category 3. For category 1, we want the D3, the item cost, to be fixed, so we freeze that. And over here's D3, we freeze that. Then we copy that down. But this time we want to make sure that the Q is A14, and that's correct. And this Q is A14, and that's correct. Return. And so that's going to be the correct equation. And notice here for 90, it's 205,200, and that's exactly what it should be for 90. We'll just do the same thing for the second category. The D4 is frozen. D4 is frozen because we want the same item cost for all the values of Q. Then we copy that. Then we paste it. But this time we want the B14 to be A14 and this B14 to be A14, and we're going to copy that down. So there's all the values for the second category. And then the third category, again, we want the D5 to be constant, the D5 to be constant. Then when we copy this down, we want to make sure the C14 is A14. And this C14 is A14. And there we go. So now we have the total cost equation for all of the categories for different values of Q. So let's copy all this down. And it goes to 800, but let's go well above 800. Let's see how many this is going to be. Let's go to 1400. That'll be good. So now let's graph the total cost as a function of Q for each category. Highlight this, Control, Shift, down arrow, then insert. We want a scatter plot, and let's have a smooth scatter plot. Move this over here. And so there's our three categories. So we'll go under Design. Let's add chart element. Let's have a legend to the right. And then up here we can do the format, and let's darken this so we can move it around and see what we're moving. And there's our categories, and we can make this larger to where the three categories, 1 is blue, 2 is gold, and 3 is the gray. Chart title, we can say cost curves for quantity discount categories. And that's not bad. So we can start with that. We plotted each total cost curve from 0 to 1400. But we know that each category applies to a different range of Qs. So we can plot the cost of each category only for the feasible range of Qs for that category. So let's start by moving this out of the way so I have more control. And then for the first category, we know the range is from 0 to 200. So we come down to 210, and then Control, Shift, down arrow, and delete. And then we'll only plot the values in the range. For category 2, we'll start here, Control, Shift, up, delete. And that goes from 200 to 800. Control, Shift, down arrow, delete. And then finally for the third category, it's 800 or more. So we'll go here, Control, Shift, up, delete. And then if we come up here, there's the first category, there's a second category, and there's a third category. Now we can see where the minimum cost is. The minimum cost for the third category is here. For the second category is here. For the third is here. For the entire problem, the EOQ is 200. So that's how you solve and graph the quantity discount problem in Excel. So this ends the video on Inventory Theory EOQ, Quantity Discounts with Excel. I hope this helps. Thanks for watching.